And so they landed up in the United States, and they really found that they had virtually no skills which were of use to most employers. They had a heavy accent and really didn't have much in terms of skills. And but they found that motels, buying motels was a great way to go. And the reason they thought that was that because a typical Patel family at the time could buy a 10 or 15 room motel for well under $100,000, maybe $50,000 to $75,000. And the family could live in one or two of those rooms. And because motels are labor intensive, they would pretty much fire all the staff, and the family would do all the work. So laundry, cleaning rooms, watching the front desk, everything was done by different members of the family. And they became low-cost operators. They looked at every single facet of the business. And so once a motel came under Patel ownership, two things happened. One is that their operating costs dropped. And because their operating costs were lower, they were able to charge lower rates and increase occupancy. And so typically the Patel-owned motel in a particular area would always do economically better in terms of cash flows than the other non-Patel-owned motels. And as soon as they had enough cash flow, they would buy the second motel and then the third motel, and they just keep levering him and buying them up. And we end up with the result where we are today, where they pretty much dominate the space. And that aspect to the way they went about doing their business has a lot of correlation with investing, because the whole Buffett sentence of being a good businessman is a great skill set to being a great investor. And the particular facet that they followed was this notion that I call heads I win and tails I don't lose much. So if you looked at the economics of a Patel buying a motel, typically they would put $5,000 or $10,000 down, and most of it was a bank loan. And if for some reason they were not able to manage the cash flows, the banks really would prefer not to take the motel back for closing it. They would prefer to do, what they did recently in the financial crisis, extend and pretend. Keep the same guy running it, and hope that things kind of improve. So either way, the end result was the Patels, even with high leverage, were unlikely to lose their properties, and they didn't. Because they were smart operators, they got nowhere near that mark. And after a few years, banks actually wanted to lend to motels under Patel ownership, because they saw the default rates and all that were markedly different than the rest of the population. And so that worked out quite well for them. And there's this notion that it's just the Patels that have this kind of tight-fisted way of operating, and this heads I win, tails I don't lose much. But it's actually is available to us anywhere we look, and you find it in all kinds of places. So, for example, if you look at Richard Branson in England, who's as far away from the Patels as you can think of, and if you examine the way Branson runs his different businesses, they're very much in sync with the Patel model of operating, with heads I win, tails I don't lose much. So